Hi guys, it's Misty from the Book Rat. As we're nearing the end of 30-Day Book Binge later this week, I thought now would be a good time to talk about some of the lessons that I've learned from doing this over the years. So today I have a little chat for you of 5-ish tips to build a better reading habit. And the number one that I've learned through doing 30-Day Book Binge consistently is regularity. I say this in every 30-Day Book Binge video. It's not about how much you read or what you're reading, it's just about doing it routinely, making it a part of your daily life, your daily routine. That is literally habit building. That's how you do it. That's what you do. I noticed towards the end of the very first 30-Day Book Binge, and I've noticed it every single time since then if I have sort of fallen off on my reading, as we get near the end of one of the monthly challenges, I start to feel like my day is incomplete if I haven't read. So like sometimes, if I forget, I'll lay down in bed and it'll be that little voice in the back of my head being like, there's something I was supposed to do today. And then it will hit me, and it's reading. It's always reading. And it's just, even if I'm only reading 10 or 15 minutes a day, just having that regularity to it really makes it feel like your day is incomplete if you haven't done so. So if you're trying to build a reading habit, whether it's daily or not, I think it's a good idea, at least to start off, by reading daily. Again, it doesn't have to be for very long. It doesn't have to be anything complex. It can even just be sitting and reading the newspaper or something like that. But just the intention of sitting down, having that time, having it be a dedicated part of your life, I think that really starts to make you prioritize it in a really low pressure way, which is why I've been doing the 30-Day Book Binge and why I think it's connected with a lot of you. But that leads me into my next couple of points, really, is that for a lot of people when they're trying to build a habit, I think they tend to either go to extreme and they want to, read for 2 hours every day, or they want to read all of these big classics that they've always heard about. It's the same thing that people run into with setting resolutions at the beginning of the year. They don't ease themselves into it when it's something that you haven't been doing. You kind of have to break it in. And also, they tend to lock themselves into a box really quickly. So my second tip is variety. I think that when you're trying to build a daily habit, even if you're planning on kind of dialing it back to, reading every weekday or reading 3 times a week, whatever it may be, I think building in some variety for yourself, it keeps things fresh. It keeps things not feeling so like a chore or like homework. So trying different genres, different styles, different formats, listening to some things on audiobook, reading some things in a physical book, some things in an ebook. I think they all kind of hit differently. I know for me personally, reading a physical book just feels different, and I kind of feel like I absorb it differently than I do if I'm reading an ebook and kind of squeezing in 10 minutes here on my phone because I'm waiting on something, or when I'm listening to an audiobook while I'm cooking or something like that. I think it keeps your brain from getting bored. It keeps things a little bit more fresh, a little looser, and it also gives you more opportunities to get that daily reading in so that you're not just stuck in the same routine. I think it's good to build a routine, but I also think it's good to break a routine. So maybe you're used to reading in your comfy chair or reading in bed every night or something like that, and that's great. That helps build that habit. But I think also having ways to kind of break away from that and fit things in here or there, having that variety and having those different ways to access books and to reinforce your goals, I think it keeps things a little bit fresher. I think also having different genres. Maybe you do want to use your reading habit to kind of tick off some of those boxes of, things that you've been wanting to read for ages, but having the fluffy books that you use as a palate cleanser, or having some graphic novels thrown in there, having some nonfiction or some poetry, or just anything that kind of breaks the mold and keeps things interesting, I think will lead to a more healthy and long-lasting habit that you don't resent. Which leads me to tip 3, which is just to kind of relax about it, I think, as I mentioned, a lot of people go into setting a goal as this very serious all or nothing thing. And I think that is the wrong way to approach it, because as soon as you resent something, you stop wanting to do it. And you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. Maybe your goal is to read every day, but allow yourself to have days where you don't read, or know that you have that option at the very least. There might be days that you're just too busy. There might be days that something big happens and you just don't have time or it slips your mind. You might have days where you get sick, and you don't need that extra layer of pressure on you to, can't break my streak. Sometimes having that streak and that kind of mental reward is a great thing, but if it becomes too much structure and too much control, I think you lose the joy of it, and then what's the point? What's the point? Just kind of relax about it. Allow yourself to take a breather if you need to. Allow yourself to just sit and have a casual, comfy day, where you're just like bundled up in your chair and you're just gonna read something casual, and it doesn't even matter if you enjoy it or finish it. Maybe you're just browsing through something. That counts too. It's still building the habit, but giving you a little bit of leeway. And if you miss a day, if you break your streak, if you decide that you want to have a long weekend, that's fine. It's fine. Good habits shouldn't feel like jail. They should just, the whole idea of it, of reading for pleasure, is pleasure. Allow yourself that. Which brings me to my fourth point, which is that every now and then you should take a little bit of time to just reassess. Be an active reader who thinks about if something's working for you or if it's not. Maybe you started out wanting to read every day of the week, but you've realized that that is just not something you have time for, or it's just not allowing you to absorb books in the way you want to. So stop, reassess, and say, well, should I just read every other day? Should I read for half an hour instead of an hour? Or whatever your goal is, just stop and think, is this still working for me, or is this some way that I could make it work better? I think there are other ways that you can be an active reader and reassess things too. TBRs really work for a lot of people, even if you ignore them. Just the process of thinking about what you want to read and what's kind of coming next, what you are looking forward to. I think that's a great way to kind of keep the enthusiasm going. And even reassessing right down to what you're reading. I think one thing that readers are very guilty of is an all or nothing mentality. How many people have you heard say that they have to finish a book once they start it, and they end up reading things that they hate? I think most of us have been there, and some of us are still actively there. And I think that that's a sure way to kill your desire to read. You're going to come across a beast of a book that you just don't want to finish, and it's going to feel like such a chore, and it's going to break your enjoyment and break your habit and your routine so much that you may feel like, what's the point of even going back to it? Or you'll think, do I even like reading? Am I still a reader? I think it's much more healthy to just stop and assess, is it the book or is it me? It might be the timing. It might be you, and you might just be not in the mood for that, and it's okay to say, I'm going to close this, I'm going to set it aside, maybe I'll come back to it later, and maybe I won't. It also might be the book, and it's fine to say, this doesn't work for me, and I'm going to let it go. Your daily reading habit should not feel like a punishment, so don't be afraid to DNF books, don't be afraid to reassess your goals and your priorities, and don't be afraid to include the thinking about books, the sort of active reading, reviewing books, researching what's coming out, looking into best of lists and new authors and things like that. That's all part of the routine in as much as you want it to be. And it's going to give you a much more, I think, secure foundation for a really solid, long-lasting habit if you are actively engaged and not just feeling like you're slogging through one book after another. And that kind of segues into my last point, which is to share. I think one of the best ways to keep the enthusiasm up about something and to feel like it's not purposeless is to find community, to share about whatever it is you're doing. Not only does putting it out there and having people know about whatever your project is, whether it's daily reading or something else, having it out there I think keeps you accountable, because mentally it's out there, you've said it, and you don't want to fail at what you've said. But also having it out there means that people might ask you about it. So whether it's online or whether you're talking to your friends or your family, that you might say, so how's your daily reading challenge going? Or have you read anything good lately? And just engaging on that level helps to keep you going. But I think also the community building aspect of it builds the enthusiasm. So when you have a great book and you talk about it, I think it makes you even more excited to find that next great book. It also means that whoever you're talking to might recommend other great books to you, because they're going to be like, oh, you know what, that reminds me, I just read this one and it was so great, or I read this book that was very similar and you might like it. It's like creating fandom, you know, you get more and more into something and more like positive, happy serotonin vibes from having a more kind of well-rounded enjoyment of something and that community aspect. And even if it's books that you didn't like, how great is it sometimes to just vent and trash something that you hated, that was just awful, and you want to talk about all of its flaws. All of that, I think, it keeps your reading or your reading habit from existing in a vacuum and starting to feel kind of pointless. Because if you're just tearing through books, just one after the other, and nothing else is ever coming of it, you're never discussing them, you're never reviewing them, you're never sharing them with people in your life, after a while it can start to feel like, what was the point? And what is the point of continuing the reading habit? Like, no one's gonna know if I've never talked about it, if I never talk about what I'm reading, and I've never talked about the fact that I read all the time. If I just stop, who's gonna know? No one even knows that that's a part of your life, you know? There's a reason that social media is so successful. There's a reason that sites like Goodreads exist. We are social creatures, and interacting about the things that we love and the things that we hate, building a community of like-minded individuals who can recommend things to you, or who you can recommend things to and have them come back and be like, thank you for telling me about that because I loved it. All of those things, I think, they just increase the positivity of the whole experience, make it feel more complete, take it from being something that is very internal and isolated into something that is just a part of your world. And I think that makes a healthier, more enjoyable habit. It's not like you have to talk about every single thing you read. It's not like you have to tell every person or have all of these social media accounts that you post obsessively to. You don't want to give more work to yourself, but just make an effort at least every now and then to reach out and share. Share your love of reading, share books with people that you think would like them, leave reviews for your favorite books, just something that kind of makes the whole experience seem more fuller. So there you go, those are 5 tips that I have to build a better and more rewarding reading habit, and ways to build one that's going to be long-lasting and enjoyable and not feel like work, not feel like you're still in school or like you have to slog through. So that's what I think. That's why I think that 30 Day Book Binge works the way it does and is so helpful. If you have favorite tips or certain things that you do to keep your reading habit going, I would love to hear about them in the comments. And if you have go-to, challenges or websites or things that inspire you and motivate you, I would definitely love to hear about them as well. But that is all for this video. As always, thank you guys for watching, and happy reading!